Welcome to SmokeHouseStudios.net. The in-studio broadcast feed is now live.
Warning. This show is about the return of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. If you are easily offended by the truth, then you need to keep listening. His return is drawing near.
SmokeHouseStudios.net. The Front Porch Show. A unique blend of current events and what they might mean, humbly seen through the eyes of God's Word, the Bible, in an old-school front porch discussion with occasional guests, your input, and a guiding hand through Christ. Broadcasting from atop the front porch, it's SmokeHouseStudios.net's The Front Porch Show. Now, carefully blending more smoke goodness in each and every soundbite, your host, Smokehouse.
Hey, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, friends. Back with you once again on this October the 12th, 2019. Jam-packed with all kind of information. It's been still coming in today, and we're going to get to all of it. We're going to cover some things tonight that we've covered on a past show. I think it's very vital, very important. I've been getting a lot of contacts from people here lately that's been involved in a spiritual battle. Their lives are just being shaken and turned upside down. I guess if you look and pay attention to the news this week, the Democrats are thoroughly a lunatic. I mean, they have totally lost their mind, and they are coming after not only the President of the United States, but they're coming after us, especially the Christians, with a vengeance. Now, we know this is a spiritual battle. We know that everything that we are witnessing is exactly that. But we need to, once again, identify what spirit that we're dealing with, especially this week. A few months back, I did a program discussing about this ancient Greek Roman god known as Pan, P-A-N, like you cook in, Pan. And we're going to revisit this god for just a moment. In ancient Greek religion and mythology, Pan is the god of the wild, shepherds and flocks, nature of mountain wilds, rustic music, and impromptus, and companion of the nymphs. And he has the hindquarter legs and horns of a goat, in the same manner as the fallen sitar. With his homeland in rustic Arcadia, he's also recognized as the god of fields, groves, wooden glens, and often affiliated with sex. Because of this, Pan is connected to fertility and the season of spring. The ancient Greeks also considered Pan to be the god of theatrical criticism. We get the word panic, which is derived from this god's name, because he was also full of lies and deceit, like to create terror and panic in those that he sought after. Now, it is very interesting here that many modern scholars consider Pan to be derived from the reconstructed Proto-Indo-European god, whom these scholars believe to have been an important pastoral deity. This god of Pan is also where Disney, keep in mind now, this god Pan is where also Disney got the character Peter Pan, because Pan was also known to play the flute. We are destroyed due to lack of knowledge. See, Disney has been shoving this god in our face for some time. But if we have been paying attention, we have been seeing the Democrats this week instill nothing but panic and terror into society, but panic themselves is what they are enduring with all that is surfacing with the latest coming from the Giuliani-Trump era. But the worship of Pan in Arcadia, which was always the principal seat of worship, Arcadia was a district of mountain people culturally separated from other Greeks. Arcadian hunters used to scourge the statue of the god if they had been disappointed in the chase. better known as what we call Caesarea Philippi. This is where this God originated, is Caesarea Philippi in Rome, in the Roman ancient era. This god Pan, that is where it originated from. And the ancient Greeks believed that this god Pan was drawn from the rocks. This is how it came to be. Now, if we move into Matthew chapter 16, we find the story of Christ feeding the multitude, calling out the Pharisees, because remember now, the Pharisees and the Sadducees, all they knew was the law, and they knew the law inside and out, but that's as far as they took it. They knew not to commit adultery. They knew not to sin. But they stood up there proud, thinking that they are pseudo-intellectual like our left is today. And that's as far as they took the law. They basically didn't really practice what they preached, and Christ was calling them out. And then after they fed the multitude, Christ and the disciples, they get on the boat and they go to this area known as Caesarea Philippi. And in Matthew 16, we move to verse 8, and it says that which when Jesus perceived, he said unto them, O ye of little faith, why reason ye among yourselves, because ye have brought no bread? See, when they got to Caesarea Philippi, the disciples were freaking out because as they were getting there, one said to the other, man, we didn't bring any bread. We didn't bring anything to eat. Well, they were just over in this other area and watched Jesus feed the multitude with fish and bread. So why are they freaking out? And this is what Jesus was telling them, man, why are you freaking out here not having any bread? Did you not just see what I had accomplished back there? Verse 9 says, do you not understand, neither remember the 5 loaves of the 5,000 and how many baskets that we took up? I mean, you can see God being pretty upset here. It's like, were you not even paying attention? What were y'all doing? And so then they understood what he was talking about as far as that is concerned, but he warned them. Now listen very close, because this is going to carry the show. In verse 11, he said, how is it that ye did not understand that I spake, if not to you concerning bread? Because what he had told them they need to beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Why are they concerned with bread? Why are you concerned with something to eat after seeing what I had accomplished over here? I want to warn you to be aware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the Sadducees, which means don't worry about the small stuff. You need to pay attention to what is important. These Pharisees and Sadducees are not telling you the full truth, just like the American church today is skittish and scared to tell the truth, but yet we feel like we're being fed when we attend our worship and the preacher preaches his sermon. We need to be aware of that leaven and understand the rooted truth here. That's the important message, because the church is about, we've been talking about it a long time. The church is right there on the fence, and they're about to have to make their decision. We have Beto. Now, we know Beto's not going to be president, but we know that through these candidates, the Democrat Party is speaking exactly what they're meaning and what they're going to do to us the minute they get into power. And Beto this week basically said that if a church does not recognize homosexuality, then they are going to lose their 501c3. So there you go, friends. That's going to put 3/4 of the church in the United States on the other side of the fence. They're going to do what the government says because they don't want to lose that almighty dollar. But anyway, they get to Caesarea Philippi, And when Jesus came into the coast of Caesarea Philippi, he asked the disciples, saying, "Whom do men say that I am?" And they said, "Some say that thou art John the Baptist, Elisha, and others Jeremiah, or one of the prophets." He said unto them, "But whom say ye that I am?" He's like, I don't care what rumors you've heard of who I may be. Who do you in your heart think that I am? And Simon Peter answered and said, "Thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God." Very good. You know, Peter called it right. And then in verse 17 it says here that Jesus answered and said unto them, "Blessed art thou, Simon Peter, for flesh and blood hath not revealed it unto thee, but my Father which is in heaven. And I say also unto thee that thou art Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it." This Caesarea Philippi, or this god Pan, Satan, whatever you want to call him, Baal, but this ancient Greek Roman god Pan, who is responsible, this demon that is responsible for panic, terror, torture, sexual immorality, and everything else that was drawn from the rocks there in Caesarea Philippi, that is where Christ took the disciples and asked Peter, "Who am I?" And he says, "You are the Christ." And Jesus said, "Up on this rock I will build my church." See, Christ knew exactly what ancient satanic deity was believed to have been drawn from these rocks. And Christ said, "It is these very rocks here that I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail." So this God of Pan, now understanding what it's responsible for, this is what it is using today to tear down the church. It's using terror, panic, Antifa, rioting. It's using all of the things that this God is designed to use to defeat the church. And here is the sad part. It's winning. When God told us, or when Christ told us that on this very rock, what he's telling us is this God of Pan is not going to prevail. The gates of hell are not going to prevail. He even goes on further to say, "And I will give unto thee the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whoever thou shalt bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatever thou shalt loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven." Then charged his disciples that they should tell no man that he was with Jesus the Christ. We have the keys to the kingdom, people. It was given to us on top of that deity. Christ is above. He is God of all, above that deity that we are battling right now, this spirit. Now, I've been getting a lot of messages over the last month or so. One in particular that I would like to bring up. I won't mention any names. But there is an issue on the home front, and this person emailed me and said one of the saving factors is that they can sit with their headphones on and listen to this program on a Saturday night. This is a spiritual battle, and this deity, one of these gods, intimidation, hatred, panic, deceit, everything that's involved is really at work. And tonight I titled the program Aaron and Hur. Who is Aaron and Hur? Aaron is Moses' brother. And Hur, if you remember Moses, Israel was fighting a battle, and Moses was commanded to keep his arms up in the air. And as long as Moses kept his arms in the air, Israel would win the battle. And as Moses was up in years, and the longer he held his arms up, the more tired and weak he became, and he would lower his arms, and when he would, Israel would then start becoming weak and began to start being defeated. And Moses had to raise his arms back up, and he was having trouble. Well, Aaron and Hur ran to the rescue and held up Moses' arms for him until Israel completely annihilated the enemy. We're in this spiritual battle. It is about to get physical. There is a message that we need to understand, that when we see things falling apart in the physical, that means that it's coming together in the spiritual. And the more intense that this becomes, the hatred, the separation, understand that spiritually things are coming together. So real quick, before we dive into the week's happenings, I want to take you to Acts chapter 14. So all of you who are going through this type of battle with the spirits. A young lady by the name of Kelly shared this with me today, and it was almost confirmation, because this is what I wanted to talk about at the open, but her message that she sent really just put the icing on the cake, so I give her credit for sharing this with me. But in Acts chapter 14 it says, "And it came to pass in Iconium that they went both together into the synagogue of the Jews, and so spake, that a great multitude, both of the Jews and also the Gentiles, believed." So they go into the church, they go into the synagogues, and they're wanting to speak this message that we're speaking tonight, verse 2. "But the unbelieving Jews stirred up the Gentiles and made their minds evil, affected against the brethren." So when they came in to these synagogues to speak the truth, there was a spirit that was in this synagogue, and it is the same spirit that has been then that we're battling now. When the truth came in, the unbelieving Jews stirred up the Gentiles and made their minds evil, affected against the brethren. What are we doing here? We are trying to gather knowledge. We're trying to gather knowledge of the Word of God. We are opening our roadmap on a Saturday night as we see, again, the physical falling apart, but yet the spiritual coming together. And we want to learn the truth. We want to get to the truth. We want to find the rooted truth. But those around us, whether it be our spouses, our family members, co-workers, it does not matter. There are those that are unbelieving that try to stir us up. Stir us up. This God of Pan, this spirit of Pan, and I'm not trying to say these people are possessed, but what I'm saying is, to the unbelieving, they are receptive to this spirit. But Christ told us that it is up on that rock. We are above this spirit. And that the gates of hell are not going to prevail, because he's going to build his church up on this rock. We are up on this entity. We are up on this spirit. We have authority over it. Verse 3. "Long time therefore abode, they speaking boldly in the Lord, which gave testimony unto the word of his grace, and granted signs and wonders to be done by their hands." So what happened there? So they go into the church, they go into the synagogue to speak the truth, and then those unbelieving started stirring up the masses to cause confusion. This spirit tried to infiltrate. But what did Paul and them do? They spoke the word with boldness. See, this is the step we're missing. See, when we see this animosity. When we meet this aggression, when this spirit balls up and attacks us, why do we feel the need that we need to cower down? The church was built up on that. Up on that is where the church is, and the gates of their hell are not going to prevail. Why do we feel the need to cower down and ourselves feel empty and weak? Friends, that is the time, just like Paul, when he met adversity in the synagogue and he saw the division take place, he stood up and spoke the word with boldness. Verse 4. But the multitude of the city was divided, and part held with the Jews and part with the apostles. Paul didn't go into a religious area. He went into a society that we are living in now. We are rooted but divided. We're rooted in the truth. The other side is rooted in the falsehoods and the fables. And we have never been more divided than we are right now, just like it was here when Paul and them went to the synagogue. Verse 5. And when there was an assault made, both of the Gentiles and also the Jews with their rulers to use them despitefully and to stone them. Let me read that again. And when there was an assault made, both of the Gentiles and the Jews with their rulers to use them despitefully and to stone them. Well, I'll be dogged. Okay, so if I'm reading this right, Paul is carrying the word of truth, and he's going into the churches and into the synagogues to speak it, but this spirit, and just tonight, there's many other spirits. I'm just tonight identifying Pan for the simple reason that Christ himself built his church up on that rock. We have authority over this. There was division, and then there was violence. There was assaults made because of this. What are we seeing today, man? What did we just see over there in Minnesota when Trump went on his rally, had an outstanding rally, and when he left, Antifa was out there beating people, throwing rocks, they were being assaulted in Minneapolis, just like Paul and them were assaulted here. Okay, so outside of say your home issue or your work issue, wherever you're having this spiritual battle manifest itself and it's causing you to feel weak, you may be being assaulted too. But let's move to verse 6 and see if we can find us an answer. Verse 6 says, they were aware of it, and they fled unto Lystra and Derbe cities of Laodicea, and unto the region that lieth round about. So they came into their area, they spoke the truth. It caused division, then it caused violence, and then they moved on to the next place. Verse 7, and there they preached the gospel. Continued, even after seeing all of this and enduring all of the assaults and the stonings, they went to this next place and they continued preaching. Verse 8, and there sat a certain man of Lystra, impotent in his feet, being a cripple from his mother's womb, who had never walked. The same heard Paul speak, who steadfastly beholding him, and perceiving that he had faith to be healed, said with a loud voice, stand up on thy feet. And the leopard walked. He leaped and he walked. So what does that tell us? We're enduring a very, very serious battle here, friends. We're being assaulted for it. We're being hated for it. And you may not be trying to speak the truth with coworker, spouse, or whoever, but your life changes. The way that you have have learned the Word and you have started growing in God and you understand the ways that you need to be living, you may not be saying a word to that person, but your actions, the way that they see that change in you, is setting off that spirit. And we don't need to let that influence us in our walk with God, in our continued search and preaching of the truth, the Word of God. There's going to be assaults. Paul and them, when they were being stoned, they didn't let it get to them. Paul spoke the Word with boldness, and when they had accomplished their mission in that area, they went to another place. And it was in that other place that a man who had been crippled since birth could receive this word because it was being spoke with such boldness. He believed. And because he believed, he was able to be healed, and he walked. And when the people saw what Paul had done, they lifted up their voices, saying in the speech of Lycaonia, "The gods are come down to us in the likeness of men." Christ is in us. We are the temple. We are to be Christ-like, regardless of what's going on around us. It's not going to be pleasant. If you go in the Bible and read what the history of the disciples ended up being, they didn't fare very well. They all died an agonizing death. But if you're not prepared to walk solely with Christ, knowing that's going to be your outcome, then you need some soul searching to do. So the point of telling you all this is, friends, this week, this God of panic and terror and hatred has literally reared its ugly face. But this actual God of where it was mythically birthed is where God said that upon that rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail. And as we get into tonight's show, you're going to find out that the gates of hell are knocking strongly at our door. Boldness. Paul spoke the word with boldness in these days. Are you prepared to speak the word with boldness, despite all of the animosity and hatred that you're enduring? You're going to have to saddle up, because I'm telling you what, it's coming, and it's coming pretty quick. So when we get back, we're just going to dive right into it. Chuck's going to be with us tonight, and we're going to kick it off with the latest round of this impeachment. We're going to kick it off with that, and we're going to go into what's going on in California. But we have to understand this impeachment is the perfect example of the God pan and what he is trying to do. Divide, kill, steal, and destroy. Satan is at work. Lawlessness abounds. And it is time to speak the word with boldness. I don't care how many stones come at us, how many sticks come at us, friends. It's us. It is our duty to do so. So hold tight. We'll be right back right after this.
Smokehouse.
To talk to Smokehouse, dial 712-770-3857. That number once again is 712-770-3857. Then dial 252-380, followed by the pound sign. Call in to join the show.
SmokehouseStudios.net. God is among us. The door to the ark is slamming shut.
Let's play a game of Who Am I? Listen very carefully to the clues. I was born in one country, but raised in another country. My father was born in yet another country. I was not his only child. He fathered several children with numerous women. I became very close to my mother, as my father showed no interest in me. My mother died at an early age from cancer. Although my father deserted me and my mother raised me, I later wrote a book idolizing my father, not my mother. Later in life, questions arose over my real name. My birth records were sketchy. No one was able to produce a legitimate, reliable birth certificate. I grew up practicing one faith, but then converted to Christianity, as it was widely accepted in my new country. I wrote a book about my struggles growing up. It was clear to those who read my memoirs that I had difficulties accepting that my father abandoned me as a child. I became active in local politics when I was in my 30s. Then, with help behind the scenes, I literally burst onto the world scene as a candidate for national office in my 40s. They said I had a golden tongue and I could talk anyone into anything. I had a virtually non-existent resume, little work history, and no experience in leading a single organization. Yet I was a powerful speaker, and citizens were drawn to me as though I were a magnet. I drew incredibly large crowds during my public appearances. This bolstered my ego. At first, my political campaign focused on my country's foreign policy. I was very critical of my country in the last war and seized every opportunity to bash my country. But what launched my rise to national prominence were my views on the country's economy. I called my campaign a people's campaign. I was the surprise candidate because I emerged from outside the traditional path of politics, and I was able to gain widespread popular support. I knew that if I merely offered the people hope, together we could change our country and the world. So I started to make my speeches sound like they were on behalf of the downtrodden, the poor, the ignorant, to include persecuted minorities. My true views were not widely known, and I kept them unknown until after I became my nation's leader. I had to carefully guard reality, as anybody could have easily found out what I really believed if they had simply read my writings and examined those people that I associated with. I'm glad they didn't do it, because then I became the most powerful man in the world, and then the world learned the truth. Who am I? I am Adolf Hitler. If you were thinking of someone else, you should be afraid. Very afraid.
Wow. Ecclesiastes 1:9. What has been done will be done again. What has happened will happen again. There's nothing new under the sun. We're going to get into Obama and his legacy and all that has come out this week and last week. But first we're going to dive into the impeachment. But let's bring Brother Chuck onto the program. Hello, Chuck. How you doing there, old bud?
Hey, good, man. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. It's been a while. You been doing all right?
Yeah, man. Just busy as ever, you know. You know how it goes.
Well, what do you think about all of the saga that we're enduring these last couple of weeks?
You know, I'm not surprised just because we know what those stinkers are up to. You know, they never give up, and they, of course, won't ever give up until they get put in prison. So, you know, they don't follow the rules. They don't go through the right avenues for impeachment because, you know, they don't respect rules. To them, they just do whatever they want. Amen. So it's kind of crazy to look at and just think, man, these people actually think they're going to do this. They don't have to go through the proper channels. They don't have to have any actual facts. All they got to do is just steamroll it forward. It's crazy.
Well, steamroll it, and then intimidation, working on people's lack of knowledge of the law, the Constitution.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because, in layman's terms, let me set the stage. When the Democrats decide that they want to impeach, they have to come together and they have to all vote. And what is it, 2/3? If they do vote to impeach, that becomes the indictment against the president. And then it moves into the Senate, where there the president has due process under the law. He has the right to defend himself. He has the right to bring in any amount of evidence, subpoena any type of witnesses that he wants to in his defense. It's a trial.
Right.
But the Democrats don't want to pass the vote. They don't want it going into the Senate because they know it will die in the Senate. And it's also going to expose all of their shenanigans once Trump starts bringing in these witnesses. He'll be able to dish out the FISA documents and all of these sealed indictments. So what the Democrats are trying to do is have their cake and eat it too, not vote on an actual impeachment, but yet they're still able to keep this in the Senate, or in the House, and then the media helps fan the flames to make it appear to be real, okay?
Yeah.
And
I was just going to say they're trying to convict him in the courtroom of the media.
Right. Right. And so what they have been doing is they have not been issuing legal subpoenas. They're just sending letters out to these people in the Trump campaign, appearing to be a subpoena and wanting them to come and testify in front of Congress, which they don't have to honor because it's not a legal document. Okay? So,
and they could say they're refusing to do it, but the reason they're refusing to do it is because it's not legal.
Exactly. And I forgot this gentleman's name, and I want to give him credit, but he actually read the letter that the White House finally sent to the Democrats, okay, explaining why that they are not going to do what the Democrats say. Here we go.
Here, once again, is the letter to Nancy Pelosi and the chairman of the committees in the House of the U.S. House of Representatives. Dear Madam Speaker and Mr. Chairman, I write on behalf of President Donald J. Trump in response to your numerous legally unsupported demands made as part of what you have labeled, contrary to the Constitution of the United States and all past bipartisan precedent, as an impeachment inquiry. As you know, you have designed and implemented your inquiry in a manner that violates fundamental fairness and constitutionally mandated due process. You have denied the president the right to cross-examine witnesses, to call witnesses, to receive transcripts of testimony, to have access to evidence, to have counsel present, and many other basic rights guaranteed to all Americans. You have conducted your proceedings in secret. You have violated civil liberties and the separation of powers by threatening executive branch officials, claiming that you will seek to punish those who exercise fundamental constitutional rights and prerogatives. All of this violates the Constitution, the rule of law, and every past precedent. Your highly partisan and unconstitutional effort threatens grave and lasting damage to our democratic institutions, to our system of free elections, and to the American people. President Trump and his administration reject your baseless, unconstitutional efforts to overturn the democratic process. Your unprecedented actions have left the president with no choice. In order to fulfill his duties to the American people, the Constitution, the executive branch, and all future occupants of the office of the presidency, President Trump and his administration cannot participate in your partisan and unconstitutional inquiry under these circumstances. Now, let me break for just a second. Basically, what his lawyer is saying here is this entire inquiry is set up to be unconstitutional. It violates the president's civil rights, and it violates not only what the Constitution says should happen to any witness, but it also, or anyone who is accused, but it also says that the past precedent, of which we have a lot, because this is what the fourth quote-unquote impeachment inquiry. We have past precedent, and this current inquiry violates all of them. In the history of our nation, the House of Representatives has never attempted to launch an impeachment inquiry against the president without a majority of the House taking political accountability for that decision by voting to authorize such a dramatic constitutional step. Here, House leadership claims to have initiated the gravest interbranch conflict contemplated under our Constitution by means of nothing more than a press conference. There is no legitimate basis for your impeachment inquiry. Instead, the committee's actions raise serious questions. It is transparent that you have resorted to such unprecedented and unconstitutional procedures because you know that a fair process would expose the lack of any basis for your inquiry. For the foregoing reasons, the president cannot allow your constitutionally illegitimate proceedings to distract him and those in the executive branch from their work on behalf of the American people. The president has a country to lead. The American people elected him to do this job, and he remains focused on fulfilling his promises to the American people. He has important work that he must continue on their behalf, both at home and around the world, including continuing strong economic growth, extending historically low levels of unemployment, negotiating trade deals, fixing our broken immigration system, lowering prescription drug prices, and addressing mass shooting violence. We hope that in light of the many deficiencies we have identified in your proceedings, you will abandon the current invalid efforts to pursue an impeachment inquiry and join the president in focusing on the many important goals that matter to the American people. Sincerely, Pat A. Cipollone, counsel to the president.
So here we have the Democrats, Chuck, going against the Constitution when it comes to us, okay? Violating our rights, censoring us, our First Amendment on social media, coming after our guns in the Second Amendment, the Fourth Amendment. All the Constitution does not apply to us, okay? But every time they want to pass something or get something done, well, then guess what? They lay themselves on the Constitution and say no one is above the law.
Except us. They got their finger behind their back crossed. You know, the Constitution really does matter, and they got their fingers crossed because they don't believe it. You know, it's crazy because they only care about the perception of law and the perception of truth.
Mm-hmm.
They really don't even care about it.
Right.
You know, because they don't respect it. They don't submit to it. It's just all about whatever they want to do. And really, I have two things I wanted to say. The president could technically, I think, press charges against them. Take them to court for breaking his constitutional rights.
That's what
by harassing him.
That's what Giuliani said. We're going to start suing them. And I've got a clip where Giuliani and Joe DiVincenzo has it's fixing to happen, man, and it's going to explain all that's going on in California as we break this all down. So, okay, with all that being stated, we've got Beto he's done. Okay, Beto is just done.
He's trying to stay in the news however much he can, so by saying these crazy things.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Kamala Harris is done. Joe Biden, he's done. And, you know, I find it interesting why Trump keeps asking, where is Hunter? Where is Hunter? But I'll get back to that in a moment. And so now we have really the only one left, the only powerhouse in the Democrat side is this Elizabeth Warren. Mm-hmm. And did you hear the lie that she got caught in this week?
Mm-mm.
All right. She was talking about back in the 70s, and I'm going to tell you how manipulative the media is in regards to millennials, okay? But back in the 70s, she was teaching, and she was pregnant. And she's telling everybody now that she was fired because she was pregnant. She wasn't even showing yet, but once the administration found out she was pregnant, boom, they fired her. Okay? That's what she is saying. So we've got a clip here, and it's a two-part clip. The first part, she's going to be telling us today what happened to her back in the 70s when she was pregnant. All right? And then she was in an interview many, many years ago, and she was talking about this very subject. Okay? Mm-hmm. So listen to what she said. Here we go.
This was my first job, and I was teaching. I was the speech therapist for mostly special needs kids age 4 to 6. And I loved the work. I loved the kids. I worked well with the parents, and it was everything I hoped it would be. And then in the spring of my first year, in April, my contract was renewed for the next year, and I was all set to go. But I was pregnant at the time. Wasn't showing yet. About 2 months later, when I was visibly pregnant, about 6 months along, the principal called me in and said that he wished me luck, but he'd be more comfortable having someone else in that job, and he was going to hire someone else for the job. And that was it. I lost my job.
Okay, so that was it. She lost her job. But in an interview many years ago, when she was talking about this same thing, listen to what she said.
I was married at 19 and then graduated from college, actually, after I'd married. And my first year post-graduation, I worked, it was in a public school system, but I worked with the children with disabilities. And I did that for a year. And then that summer, I actually didn't have the education courses, so I was on an emergency certificate, it was called. And I went back to graduate school and took a couple of courses in education and said, I don't think this is going to work out for me. And I was pregnant with my first baby. So I had a baby and stayed home for a couple of years.
So she said it wasn't going to work out anymore, Chuck, so she decided to quit. And they even have posted the resignation situation, the letters and what the school responded. And the school stated that they regretfully accept her resignation. They didn't even want her to go, man.
Wow.
And so she's out here now pushing this lie and being bold-faced caught in it. Do you see what I'm saying? This God of Pan that we have authority over, that the church was built on top of, where this creature crawled out of, we have authority over this. But to show you how well the media has manipulated the millennials, when I was talking to my daughter about this, I said, because she's all for Warren, she's going to vote for Warren, and I said, well, what do you think about this lie that she's caught in? And I explained it to her, and she said, well, I'm sure in that interview in the past, she had to say that because as bad as the 70s were, you couldn't come out and talk like that as a woman. And I told her, I was like, well, sweetheart, that interview where she came out and told the real truth, that was not back in the 70s. That was just a mere few years ago. So, so we can see the manipulation, the lies. So
it's crazy that they got to lie about stuff. I mean, I don't understand the full scope of why she did it, but it seems to me like it's not really a huge consequence. But that she would lie about it, it's like, why would you lie about something like that if it doesn't really make a big difference in your life? I mean, you shouldn't anyway, but why would you do that?
Well, she's tugging on the heartstrings, man. I mean, she's going after the millennial group that would feel sorry for her. And even if she has to lie to get that, she's going to do it because they're going to believe whatever the media tells them. And
I wonder if they're doing it, too, just to see how gullible people are.
It could be. I don't know.
Interesting.
But it's...
interesting.
Yeah. But just using the manipulation is what we're getting at here with this demon that we are dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
It's absolutely incredible.
I was thinking too, back, I won't go too far back, like with Trump, we were talking about, I think was it the attorney for Trump that wrote that letter? It's interesting because he said in there, the president needs to get back to doing his job, like it's distracting him. I think it's two-pronged, them going after him. It's obviously one, trying to paint him as being unfit to be president, so that way they can somehow, they can't impeach him really, but to make it seem so bad that this time around people won't vote for him because they'll think that he's actually guilty of it. I think that's really what they're pushing for because, you and I know, I know they're pretty crazy and their logic is not there, so they might for some reason feel like they can impeach him. But, I think it's just to make him look bad, and then second, to make him look bad that somehow erode his ability to be able to do his job, so that makes him look worse too.
Well, that's exactly right. They keep it in the House where it don't have to go to the Senate, and then everybody find out the crimes that the Democrats were involved in. They keep it in the House, keep the media out there, fanning the flames, and then in the public opinion, like you said, when it comes time to vote, they'll keep that in mind and would vote for the Democrat Party. But did you see the attendance that he has had at these last two rallies?
No, but I know the ones he's had, that the other ones, even the thank you tour that he did after he became president. I mean, you can't even fit. I mean, I remember when he came to Nashville, we were going over there, and we came in a couple hours early, and there was already people coming back. So there's not even anywhere to stand out around the building. So you might as well just hang out where you're at and just have lunch somewhere. So yeah,
well, that's just it. He had 25,000 inside there in Minnesota, and there were like 25 or 30,000 still outside in line, and people were still showing up, even though they knew that they couldn't get in. They were still supporting. So there's a picture meme going around Facebook that shows the crowd and Trump amongst the crowd, and it says that's the only poll that I'll trust right there.
Right. I've had somebody the other day say, "What do you think about the polls?" I go, "They're full of it." I said, "I don't even." When they say the polls say this, I don't even listen to it, because we know from Hillary and when she's running against Trump and all that stuff, and all the way, even like pretty much the whole time, whenever they would sample them, they said, "Oh, well, he actually sampled so many more Democrats and Republicans," and there's all this information coming in showing that they were just all skewed. Mm-hmm. I would much rather, or I'm much more likely to believe a big crowd of people showing up. I wore my Trump 2020 shirt today to the gas station and around here. Now, you wouldn't believe how many people say, "Man, I love your shirt. I love your shirt. Right on, man. I like your shirt." I can't even. Now, I know that we're kind of a little further outside. I'm kind of a little further outside of Nashville. But really, wherever I go, out here, people are like, "Man, yeah, Trump all the way, man." So it really encourages me to know, even especially within the area that I live in, that I know there's people all across the United States, as evidenced by his rallies, that, we ain't got nothing to worry about as far as him, getting impeached or not getting reelected. That's how I feel about it. So. Well,
I'm the same way. You remember that day we went into Starbucks wearing our paraphernalia?
Yeah.
And even people,
fun.
even people at Starbucks were like, "Yeah, man, you go, bud." But the customers coming in, I like the eyes of the workers there. They look at their eyes, they're going to roll back, and they were just going to. I give them tremendous respect that they held their tongue, because you could see it all over their face. They wanted to see something. She looked at your Hillary for President shirt and looked at my Trump 2020, and you just remember, you can see it on her face. I was like, "Oh my gosh, she's going to say something." I was like, "Wow, she didn't say anything." Wow. Yeah. Well, they were outnumbered. They could tell everybody else in there was digging.
Yeah.
Well, what they're doing, they're pulling Hillary out of the ashes here. Trump has been pimping her on Facebook and or pimping her on Twitter, and she came out on a tweet one day and said, "Don't tempt me. Don't tempt me to run again." Right. And but listen to what she said. Now, she's on this new book tour that she's written. Q tells us to follow the money on these book deals. This is how they're laundering a lot of their money, is through these so-called book deals. But, she's been peddling this book and going on interviews, and check out what she said in this latest interview just a day or so ago. Check this out.
All right.
Yeah, it truly is remarkable how obsessed he remains with me. But this latest tweet is, so typical of him. So maybe there does need to be a rematch. I mean, obviously, I can beat him again, but
she can beat him again.
She's still in denial that she got beat.
Yeah, listen one more time.
Maybe there does need to be a rematch. I mean, obviously, I can beat him again, but.
Oh my goodness! I can't. I would say I can't believe she said that, but I can believe she say that.
She's gonna beat him again, Chuck.
Oh man, I want to see him beat him again, because that was pretty rough on her. So.
Well, they've got Bannon out now. Bannon's out there making some noise, and listen to what he said about Hillary. Now, this is interesting.
What they want to do is nullify the election. They think they have a weak field, and they're prepared, it's like in chess, they're prepared to sacrifice a rook to take down a king.
Sure. Well, Joe Biden's gone.
They will throw Biden away,
yep.
right? They'll throw Biden away to get to Trump and hope Elizabeth Warren, or I even think Hillary Clinton or Bloomberg or some centrist comes in here and takes. Oh, I think
Hillary Clinton might be back.
Oh, Hillary Clinton might be back, Chuck.
I don't think she'd ever give up on wanting to do it. So she's one thing I could say for her is she's got an incredible ambition.
Oh,
That's, and a lot of people say that too. I mean, she really does. It's totally wicked ambition, but it's an ambition nonetheless.
Well, think about it. It's not necessarily her, but they've got the Clinton Foundation all set up. Everything is in order to do all the things they need to do through the Clinton Foundation. So it's not that they want her. It's that they want what she's bringing to the table. And so, as long as they can have access to that, they're gonna pull her in. So that would be very comical. But I heard on the news, the local news, the very last debate, presidential debate now, not Democrat, but the last presidential debate has already been chosen for the location. And it's going to be, drum roll, at Belmont College in Nashville, Tennessee.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. How do you get seats?
Well, I'd say you better start getting tickets now, man.
That's way cool, man. I can't, I really, in some ways, hope she does run against him again, because I can't wait to hear the stuff he says about her. Well, I couldn't get enough from the last one. I go, man, he just railed her, man. I was like, yeah.
Well, it may not be her on what Giuliani and Joe DiVincenzo is talking about, which we'll get to in a moment. But I will say this: the last presidential debate, I will put out a disclaimer and a warning, to Antifa. You're going to be right there by the Cheatham County line now. So if you're going to come to Nashville and do your shenanigans and beat people with rocks and all of that, it's
not going to go well for you.
you better keep it in Davidson County. Don't be dragging it out to Cheatham County. That could be hazardous to your health.
Yeah, you're not going to you're going to have to worry about going to safe spaces. You're going to have to worry about a lot more than that.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, if you have been paying attention to Giuliani, which this is a good time, and it's going to bring us to the top of the hour where we're going to dive into all that's going on in California. Giuliani has been slinging daggers, man, when he's being interviewed. I mean, he's just coming out with it. He's coming out with it, naming names. All right, and
why not?
And listen to what he and Joe DiVincenzo said just a few days ago. Here we go.
For years, Obama had a pay-for-play operation in his administration that is disgusting. And one of the reasons they're fighting so hard, if Biden comes out, so does Clinton come out, and about 3 others. This goes right to the top of the Obama administration, and the administration said, I didn't have scandals. It'll be the most scandal-ridden administration in our history.
Okay, that's kind of a crappy recording. But what he's saying is once everything comes out, Obama's name's going to come out, Clinton, everyone, Joe Biden, basically the whole Obama administration is coming out. Now let's continue.
Obama didn't care about ethics. He didn't care, otherwise it wouldn't have happened. That's right. A vice president should have been stopped from doing this by a president who had the slightest bit of integrity. But a Chicago Paul like Obama, pay for play 8 times, millions of dollars for your vice president, and hundreds of millions for your Secretary of State.
Foundation. This was
all. Just bought the offices.
Joe, how confident you are in the next couple of weeks? We're going to know a lot more from Horowitz, Durham, and the rest.
This is going to be bang bang couple of weeks.
Oh, wow.
It's going to be a bang couple of weeks.
That's incredible.
Yeah, sorry Giuliani's clip was so trashy, but basically what he said is Obama knew about all this, and as a president, he knew Biden was doing what he's doing. This is an ethics issue along with everything else, and he should have put his foot down, and he didn't. He allowed it to happen. He authorized it. And the Durham report and the Barr reports are going to be coming out. And Joe Davinage is like, it's going to be bang, bang, man. It's going to be bang, bang. So,
that's incredible.
Yeah, we're going to have to wait and see. Now, I'm going to need your help with this, Chuck, since you used to be a native Californian, okay?
All right.
But Gavin Nunes, the new mayor or new governor, is just a Jerry Brown on steroids.
Yeah.
And totally deep state, totally resisting all of the mayors of all the cities, resisting Trump. I mean, they're going around, they're calling it sedition. They're telling all of the people when ICE agents are coming around, they're telling the people when ICE is coming so that they can leave. They're taking over control of everything. I read a report today where gas prices right now in California $5 a gallon, man.
Wow.
And it's just absolutely amazing on what's going on. Well, okay, so let me start right here. There's just a lot dropping even right now as we speak, okay?
Wow.
But before I go there, I don't mean to do this to y'all people. I just saw something here. Chuck, did you hear about Shepard Smith with Fox News?
Yeah, him quitting or him, yeah.
Yeah, Shepard Smith, man, whose newscast on Fox News channel, it seemed increasingly an outlier on a network dominated by supporters of President Donald Trump, abruptly quit after signing off his final newscast on Friday. Smith, who had signed a contract extension last spring, said that he had asked the network to let him out of his deal, and it had agreed. Even in our currently polarized nation, it is my hope that the facts will win the day, that the truth will always matter, that journalism and journalists will thrive, he said. So his final newscast, he just says, I'm done. I'm out of here. So we have Giuliani coming out, naming names. We've got Joe Davinage saying that this report that's going to come out is going to be bang, bang, and boom, Shepard Smith is gone. Now, there is a article that was posted on LinkedIn, or not an article, but a statement from Ronald P. AMB, whoever that is. And I want to share this with you.
All right.
Shepard Smith abruptly quit his multi-year contract with Fox News today after Attorney General William Barr met with Robert Murdoch. He was reportedly escorted out by security. Fox denies this. Neil Cavuto is left shell-shocked. Smith is a deep state clown. What did Q tell us about the fake news? What happens when the public learns the truth? No one walks away from this. And Deep State shield Rachel Maddow has been walking around with an infamous ankle boot. Now, I haven't seen that. I don't know if she is. But nothing gives more pleasure than knowing these dangerous people are going down. They've destroyed my reputation, and, more importantly, they've lied about the rape, torture, and trafficking of children. Some of them actively covered up for the elite pedophiles in their rings, and as President Trump said last night, these people are sick. It's all real. It's coming out, and the members who lied about it should be incarcerated or worse. As far as I'm concerned, bye-bye. Fake news, your time has come. Pain. So apparently, I don't know the validity to that, but that's what's being reported to supposedly someone in the know. Okay,
well,
go ahead.
So there's a lot of the news anchors are CIA, ex-CIA, Anderson Cooper, and all these, numerous other people. So it wouldn't surprise me if they are getting arrested or getting the boot and then going to get arrested or whatever, or trying to get out of it, so they don't. So it wouldn't surprise me.
Oh, yeah. Well, okay, last weekend, right before the show, I was getting reports that Trump had called the Marines and the Marine Reserves to active duty. And I didn't say anything about that because it was pretty much just dropping. and I didn't know the facts behind it, so I just kind of held off on it. But it is true. The 2nd Marine Division prepares to deploy to California. Now, what Trump has done here is he has activated the Marine reserves, and I believe the order is under natural disaster or any type of emergency situation. Now, this is not, let me repeat, this is not a call to where they're all going to be loading up their armor and their guns and their tanks and hitting our streets right now. But it is a call for them to go into active duty, and if they are summoned, then they are to report immediately. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I've been out riding the roads, man, looking at all of the National Guard depots. Nothing looks out of the ordinary. Haven't seen any convoys running up and down the road. Now, Dave Hodges has been reporting that people in various places have been seeing the UN vehicles and military transportation, which could be. But we have from ABC, Channel 12 News, Camp Lejeune, that Marines at Camp Lejeune are deploying to California for a large-scale training exercise. Okay? Now, this was back on September the 17th. This was back, let me repeat, this was the 17th of September, almost a month ago, where Marines at Camp Lejeune are deploying to California for a large-scale training exercise. The 2nd Marine Division will travel to 29 Palms for a Marine Air Ground Task Force warfighting exercise.
Wow.
There will be approximately 10,000 Marines and sailors participating in the MWX, which is a multi-day division-scale unscripted force-on-force exercise with integrated training exercises. So, it says here that for the division, with thousands of people and hundreds of assets to deploy across the country and support this exercise, will be a massive feat and a test to how the division can deploy into an area of operations, he explains. The 3rd Platoon Commander, Paul Wang, says getting AAVs and other equipment to the training exercise in California is vital. The AAVs bring the assault capabilities to fight as a ship-to-shore connector. Interesting, it says ship-to-shore, which means we embark infantry troops on our vehicles, we splash off the back of the ship, swim for an extended period of time, and then assault the contested beach. Now, both men are planning portions of the deployment in this long process, but the logistics in getting something like this starts way ahead of time. Wang explained the preparation starts months in advance. Okay. So this article here came out a month ago, and 10,000 Marines are going to California, and they are practicing beach assaults. And then we hear on the 3rd of October that Trump has activated the Marine Corps for a state of an emergency to be called up immediately and be ready to go.
Wow.
And here we have the commander saying that these exercises, you know, they start getting things in place months in advance.
Well, it makes sense because, I mean, you think about any kind of, I think of like a wedding, you know, they have like the rehearsal. You know, obviously this is not the same thing as a wedding, but, you know, it's the whole idea that you want to kind of run through stuff because, especially when something's like as big as what they're talking about, you kind of want to know, you want everybody to kind of know what they're supposed to be doing because when it all comes down, you know, they really need to be knowing what they're doing because lives are on the line. So.
Right. Well, so this happens in California a month ago, and then Trump activates the Marines on the 3rd. And then I happened to stumble across a ham operator that has a YouTube channel that I follow a lot of these ham operators that we share information and all that. Well, he put out a letter. I mean, he received a letter from the state of California that the state of California, this was back around October the 3rd, are going to be pulling down ham radio repeaters because they are saying that they basically don't want to foot the bill for the repeaters anymore. So they're just going to pull them down and take them offline. Now, let me explain to you how a ham repeater works. Basically, the repeater is like up on a cell tower, okay? And so if you're at your home and say you want to talk to somebody 100 miles away, you can't just key up your radio and talk to them 100 miles away. But what you can do is transmit from your home to that repeater that's thousands of feet in the air on a mountain, and then it will repeat your signal across the other side of the mountain. They usually have 100 to 200 mile footprint. So with the repeater, you know, you could be in Nashville and you could key up and talk to a repeater that's up on the mountain over in Cookeville, and then that repeater could bounce the signal over into Knoxville. So, you know, being here in Nashville, you can't just key up and talk to Knoxville, but via that repeater, you can. So that's... Are you there? Okay. Well, he must be talking to somebody else. So that's how a repeater works. But let me explain to you how a repeater is set up. The state has nothing to do with the repeater. Period. End of discussion. If, say, Chuck and I were ham operators and we wanted a repeater, then we would apply for the license for the repeater, and then we would buy the actual repeater radio and the antennas and the coax, okay? So it's ours. It's our equipment. And then we would contact either AT&T, Verizon, or anybody that has a cell phone tower or a tower of any kind. And we would, because these companies rent space on their tower. They all do it. They have a package price for 100 feet high. They have a package price for 200 feet. And you see what I'm saying? So then Chuck and I, we would find the appropriate package that fits our needs on the height, and then you have to pay like a installation fee because that company, Verizon, AT&T, whoever you choose to use the tower of, they have to send their climbers up to install the coax antenna and everything, and then boom, your repeater is online, and then your monthly rent for that tower has to be paid, and it's paid by you. So that's why you have a lot of these repeater clubs where ham operators will get together, 50 or 60 of them, and be part of this repeater club, and then each of them will pay, $25, $30 a month, because the rent on these things range anywhere from $1,000 a month to $5,000 a month. So the ham operator owns the equipment, and it is the ham operators that make the payment on the tower to keep the antennas in it. So the state has zero to do with a ham radio repeater. Are you there, Chuck? I can't hardly hear you. Say it again.
Yeah, you hear me all right?
No, having issues, bud. Hang on. Okay, that was on my end. I apologize, man.
Okay.
So anyway,
I was about to go outside. It's really cold, so I'm glad it's on your side.
All right. So that's how a ham operated repeater is operated. The state has nothing to do with it. But this ham operator in California received a letter from California, and check out what they said.
From the governor of the state of California, Gavin Newsom, to ham radio operators across the People's Republic of California, you're fired. Yep. The state of California, well, it never was ham friendly, but they have now just fired ham radio from the emergency plan from the state of California. In the case of a fire, in the case of a lot of these emergencies, the first thing to go in their area is internet services. The cell phone service goes down. There is virtually no infrastructure for communications at that point. And like in the Paradise Fire, a lot of people were hurt and killed because they didn't have the communications to be able to be warned. So yes, in the state of California, there is this thing called the reverse 911, and they have all these really, really neat systems to warn people to evacuate, to do, to seek shelter in place, evacuate, do whatever needs to get done. But when all these systems fail, all at the same time, there's only one thing that keeps working, and that is the infrastructure of ham radio and radio communications, because it isn't an infrastructure. It isn't a real infrastructure. It is made up of this person to this person. You know the drill. Now, this is the actual email that was sent out, or the letter that was sent out from the nameless, faceless, unelected, unaccountable bureaucrat named Lorena Fisi from CAL FIRE. Basically, it goes like this. Dear John, I do understand and appreciate all the services you have provided in the past. However, with constantly changing technological advantages, there is no longer the same benefit to the state of California as previously provided. Therefore, the department no longer financially supports ham radio operators or their tenancy. Now, Shingletown attorney Nathan Zelliff pretty much said it way better than I can, and he wrote a 14-page letter to the state of California and Lorena, accurately stating that the cost to the state of California is nothing. We own the equipment, we maintain the equipment, they just house it there, which costs them nothing extra.
So this fire entity here, obviously these people are putting their repeaters on those towers, but it's still not state maintained. These people are paying rent to have the repeaters on those towers. And it's costing the state nothing. If anything, the state is getting money from these ham operators having their repeaters on the tower. And to top it off, ham radio is a federal, you have to have a federal license. Ham radio is federal. And so a state cannot come in and take down or mandate that you stop transmitting on ham radio. The only way that ham radio can be interrupted federally under the FCC guidelines is if the president implements the War Powers Act. Then you must stop transmitting, because those frequencies would be used in the event of that. But that is the only reason that, and under that also falls, emergencies. But if the if the federal government deems that they need those frequencies, then, they can stop you from transmitting. And by law, you have to respect that law. But the state itself cannot do anything, Chuck. So why is California doing this?
I have two different, schools of thought or train of thought is, like, I think one of them is, are they really that ignorant of what the law says? Or do they just feel like they just don't need to listen to it? They can just tell them, like, like they're trying to fish and see if they know what the law is, or they don't really care. They're just going to try to see if they can get away with that. And people go, oh, okay. They'll give up or something. That's the two things that pop into my head.
Well, that's just like they're saying, insurrection. This is the I'm building a case here. So we've got, back in September, we've got 10,000 Marines heading out to California for maneuvers on how to storm a beach. Okay, practicing that. 10,000 Marines. Then we have at the 1st of October. Trump actually calling the Marines to active duty. And now we have California shutting off all the repeaters across the state where you can't communicate now via the 2 meter, 70 centimeter, 6 meter bands. All right. Which basically now California is in full control of knowledge, news. Okay. They have commandeered, the commons man communication. And so then we hear that there is a place called Morgan Hill up in California, and reports started coming out that they had been implementing a martial law type of curfew in Morgan Hill, which is just right outside of San Francisco. All right, now let's throw that into the mix. And Dave Hodges has been following this pretty close. Listen to what he said about Morgan Hill.
What came out was some goings-on at Morgan Hill, California, which isn't far from San Francisco. And it's just kind of like, okay, this is new to me. I hadn't heard this. And now it's blowing up everywhere. I'm hearing from everyone and their mother. When I was driving to the studio today, Paul Martin called me. Now, I have tried to call Paul Preston unsuccessfully, but I will tell you, he and I will talk before the night is out, and I'm sure he's got some pertinent information. But here's what's really interesting. I asked a question of some of my sources. Tell me why Morgan Hill? Why is this a significant community? Answer, because it's militarily significant in times of conflict in terms of accessing the Bay Area. And I thought, well, that's really, really interesting. There's another factor here, too. It was a year and a half ago, and I haven't had time to go do the website search. But I ran an article in which people were sending me information that there were 2 radio stations that were owned by people in the Bay Area, but they were in rural California. And late at night, they were broadcasting in Russian and Chinese, and the feeling was it was code. So it'd be Russian one time, be Chinese. Do I have your attention? I raised the question. No one seemed to care. No one wanted to pay attention. But when you consider all of this in context, here's what we have from the start. Last Thursday, the state of California said you're taking down the repeaters. That destroys civilian communication, local law enforcement to use ham radios beyond line of sight. That inhibits someone mounting a defense with civilian militia and law enforcement against some invading force. That's command and control takeout, classic prior to an attack. Now we're taking down the grid. What is it, 500,000 now? I'm hearing reports as much as 800,000. For what? The wind? People are telling me in the affected areas, there's no wind. And it doesn't matter if there is wind. Every time the wind blows, do you have to turn out your lights? It's the most ridiculous, asinine explanation I've ever heard. Again, this is a command and control takedown. Before you attack, you take out the eyes and ears of your enemy. This is what we're beginning to see here. Then we have Trump responding very, very quickly to saying our deals with the Communist Chinese and the Long Beach port, they're over. See, these things can't be considered in isolation. And there's other more disturbing nuances we're chasing down right now, but I just want to stick to what we can prove. These things are what we can prove. To me, what it looks like is a case could be made for insurrection is being prepped. Steve Quayle sent me a note today and said, do you think this is a beta test? It's very possible Steve's right. But I think this is actually a move in the direction of insurrection. I don't know if there's any beta to this. I mean, we'll have to wait and see. It could be a beta test, and Steve's speculation might be right on. I have to tell you, folks, I am absolutely stunned at the turn of events. Now, I have said that when insurrection starts, it's going to start in California. And I don't enjoy being a prophet and being right, but this is what CalExit's about. This is their hook into the United Nations. It's not an accident. United Nations troops were moving around. This is also in the last week. And what did Trump do? He called up the Marine reservists. active duty orders good for 120 days. When you put all these together, I mean, maybe one of them you can look at and say, oh, okay, that's interesting. But when you put all of them together, you have to take them in context. The dots start to connect pretty clearly. The picture is forming. So I'm in the process of chasing this down. I don't know if we'll have any more answers tonight, but I am chasing down some good stories. I will tell you this. I have contacts in DHS, and you think they'd be frontline? They know nothing. But I also have been told that the takedown by PG&E of the electric grid in those key areas, it's a FEMA operation. This should have everyone's attention.
Now, I didn't mention that about the PGE, but the electric company out there in California, they've gone broke. And so they have put out information that certain areas are going to just kill the power to the community because of the high winds that they're trying to keep wildfires from happening. But like Dave was saying, all of these places, the people were like, man, there's no wind blowing. It's only like 10 mile an hour, 5 mile an hour. There's no reason. And like he said, that's the stupidest thing he's ever heard. And also, Trump has suspended, if you know, back in 2012, Obama gave many contracts to the Chinese in our longshore ports out there in Long Beach, California. Now, there has been a suspension of those contracts. Now, I don't know if it's just one individual contract. I don't know if it's all contracts as a whole. But Trump has taken over control, at least from the Chinese in certain areas of our Long Beach port down there in California. And so now, as we put all these things together, it looks like something is brewing out in California, and we can't quite put our finger on it yet, what it is. But, Chuck, let me run this by you.
Go for it.
All right. Look at our people in government that are from California. We have Dianne Feinstein, just got busted. She had a Chinese spy that was driving her around for like 20 years. Nancy Pelosi, she's from California. Kamala Harris, she's from California. Maxine Waters, impeached 45. She's from California. So now, you being a native Californian, Chuck, have you been hearing anything? Has John been talking to you about anything? Or
well, he's been saying, for quite a while that he wants to get out of there. He said, man, it's just crazy out here. I go, and I moved out of here, from out of there 10 years ago, so it was crazy back then. So I'm just kind of looking at the TV going, wow. It's like every time you hear the news, all the representatives just running their mouths and just making no sense and talking crazy stuff. And, I really pray for my friends that are still out in California because, man, it's tough out there, man, with all the crazy leaders. So.
Well, there's been a new wildfire that's kicked off, and we're going to get into that in just a moment.
Yeah, that's an every year thing.
But look at all of the environmental, the Chinese buying up our land for their wind farms, okay? In California, China owns Hollywood. China is basically, California's buddy. And they hate Trump. California hates Trump. So, is California going to just unlock the door and step aside and let China come in through the port and invade us?
I wouldn't doubt it.
Well, exactly what is going on. And, did you hear about the NBA and what they did with China?
With the Hong Kong, you're talking about the Hong Kong people saying, was it like Free Hong Kong or something like that?
Yeah, they stood up and said that they support the people in Hong Kong and what they're doing.
Yeah.
And China came to the NBA and said, well, okay, you have to apologize or you're not going to play any more games over here. We're not going to air anything and you're done and you're going to lose all of our money. So what do you think the NBA did?
I imagine they probably cowered and didn't do whatever they wanted.
They apologized. And even one of the guys on the Rockets, the team, the Rockets, check out what he said now.
Yeah, we apologize. We love China. We love, playing there. I know for both of us individually, we go there, once or twice a year. They show us the most support and love. So, we appreciate them as a fan base, and we love everything, they're about, and we appreciate their support that they give us individually and as an organization. So, we love you.
They love China. They love everything China does with the slaughtering of their citizens and the organ selling and everything China's involved with. They love it. So they cowered, man. They cowered and gave in and apologized. So, not only is Google, Apple, and all of the Silicon Valley out there in California sold out to China and trying to implement the Chinese
credit score.
Yeah, the social credit score here on us. All right. Now we've got the NBA apologizing to, and there was a gentleman on Tucker Carlson last night that talked about it's not necessarily the NBA, but it's Nike. It's Nike the ones calling the shots. Because Nike is big money when it comes to the NBA and selling a lot of tennis shoes and getting their tennis shoes made over in China.
All right.
And so, all right. I mean, so we've got some pretty big things brewing, man. I mean,
yeah. Always about the money, right?
Well, it is.
And follow the money. Follow the money.
So is this the Hail Mary? I mean, the Democrats know they're not going to win 2020, and they've got to get Trump out.
If their head's on straight, they do.
Okay.
Or halfway on straight. I don't think any of their heads are on straight, but.
Well, I want to share something with you because they know they're backed into the corner. We know the Bible tells us that the devil knows he's going to have a short time to reign, right?
Yeah.
All right. They're not going to win the election. And I don't even think that even if they try to manipulate votes and everything, it's still not going to work because you've got the walk away movement, people walking away from the Democrat. And even, it used to be just fence riding Democrats saw how they were acting like, I don't want to be a part of this. But now you got the hardcore Democrats saying, man, these people are crazy.
Well, and when you got Candace Owens, too, out there, Firebrand, telling it like it is, and there's a whole bunch of, a lot of people now saying, man, she's right, man. We're getting out of here. Trump said, too, what you got to lose, and then they repeat that a lot. They say, yeah, see, he was right. That what we got to lose. And look at what's happening now under his policies. And Candace Owens says he's, done more for the black community than pretty much any president, has done. And they actually look what's happening in the black community. Their unemployment's way down. I think, I don't know if it's like the most it's ever been down, or like 50, 60, 70%, more, than it has been in the past. But I was like, wow, so they're freaking out because now their whole base, all the people they've been lying to, and like she says, keeping them on the plantation, now they're like realizing, wow, man, we're getting used. We need to get out of here, man.
Well, they're getting used, and with Barr and Durham about ready to drop all of this information that's really going to start bringing them down, which I believe is what we saw with Shepard Smith. Okay, and they know it's coming. So are they prepared for the scorched earth? Are they prepared to burn it all down to keep themselves from going to prison? And they're going to allow China to be the one to do it. Now, I asked this. Now, this is a tad bit lengthy, only about 10 minutes, but people listen very close. This is a conversation that Dave Hodges had with Mike Adams, and it was a...
You don't want to miss it.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty powerful. So just listen close to what they have to say.
Last week, Bob Griswold called me almost early morning, like 5:30, 6 a.m. my time, and he said, have you seen they did it? And I said, did what? He said, one person in California made it illegal now to have repeaters on hillsides for ham radios. And I go, that's command and control for a civilian force fighting against an invasion like the UN or the Chinese. He goes, exactly. Mm-hmm. Well, look at the power. When you take the power down, that's also command and control. When we bomb a country before we invade it, We take out their radar. We take out their electrical grid. This is what I think we're in the process of seeing. I'm wondering if we're not ready to see armed insurrection on the part of California. And I'm suspecting it, not saying it, but we have two of the elements that you would take out if you were attacking California.
Well, it also makes no sense to shut off the power when there's wind. Because think about it. There's wind all over the country. On any given day, it's windy somewhere.
Yeah.
And there's been wind forever. And all of a sudden, wind is a reason to shut off the power grid? Seriously? I mean, it doesn't even make any sense. It's like, even in a third world country, they don't shut off the power grid if they have one just because it's windy. Who's ever even heard of that?
Never.
Yeah, they're making it up and just hoping the public will buy it, but it doesn't make any sense at all. I tend to agree with you. I'm also aware of what Griswold told you. The repeaters have been taken down, which means the ham radio community is being cut off from, Patriot level communications. So there's something going on that's bigger.
Well, there's one more exacerbating factor that could factor in. It's October, and this is the month that California becomes insolvent, and then the debt multiplies exponentially over time. And I think there's a race to control California. Now, this is the Hodges hypothesis, but there are some facts that support my thinking. And here's what I think. And Paul Preston, by the way, is in agreement with me on these points. As California's crisis worsens, you already got 60 blocks in L.A. of homeless in which, typhoid or the plague or whatever can come out of there. You've got similar situations where you need GPS to navigate the poop on the sidewalk in San Francisco. Sacramento's not much better. You've got the Oroville Dam still in crisis that would kill 1 million people if it broke and would take out a good sector of our agricultural supply here in America, not just California, because that Central Valley is incredible in what it does. So as we add all this up and the debt multiplies in California, I think it's PG&E going offline to save money as well. I think there's a dual purpose there. And then you've got Trump, who would have an excuse finally to send in the troops for humanitarian aid, but really he could send them in to start arresting the Oakland mayor for sedition by interfering in ICE activities. But on the other side, this is what I'm hearing, and so is Paul, the other side, the Cal exit side, that they want California out. I'm talking about Pelosi, Newsom, Feinstein, ex-Governor Jerry Brown, ex-members of the Obama administration, Eric Holder is their spokesperson. They would want to bring in the UN for, quote, humanitarian purposes, and there I think could be the spark for the Civil War. That's the Hodges hypothesis.
Wow. Yeah, you're putting a lot of pieces together that make sense. And remember, Feinstein is a spy for Communist China.
Yes.
Her office has been feeding Beijing the names of whistleblowers and activists who tried to approach Feinstein's office to have her do something about China. She would make copies of their passports and send them over to Beijing to have those people's family members arrested and chopped up in organ harvesting operations in China. So she's a spy.
I didn't know this. Let's not gloss over that. Mike, where are you getting this? This is incredible.
Oh, well, so we have, I used to live in Taiwan. We still have an office in Taiwan. And, I've met with the people who run the Epoch Times before. Those good people in New York.
Good people.
What they're covering now. And so what's really happening is that, well, I'll just give the long version of what I just said. So when there are people in California that are Chinese Americans that go to Senator Feinstein's office to try to get the senator to do something about the human rights violations in China, what Senator Feinstein does is copies their passports, says, we need to know your identity, who you are, takes copies of their passports, and then sends them over to Beijing. And then in Beijing, and I'm pretty sure this has been covered by the Epoch Times. I might have to search it, but I'm pretty sure they've written about this. In Beijing, then, the secret police go out and arrest and kidnap the family members of those Chinese Americans who went to Feinstein's office. Wow. And then those people, of course, are thrown in gulags and they have their organs harvested, right next to the NBA training facilities where the NBA is.
That's a story I've been covering too.
Yeah, I'm sure you would have some interesting views on that with all your knowledge about sports and so on. But It's fascinating and horrifying at the same time.
Horrifying is right on the money with this. Wow, I'm going to really go to work on this story here. I'm sorry I've missed this. I feel negligent in my duties that I don't know that Feinstein has done this. Now, do I believe it? Yeah, absolutely I believe it. I'll tell you, there's something else that came out today, too. I had Alexandra Daly on my show this morning, and she does research for me, and she has found, we know about the Long Beach port being controlled by the Chinese, but
yes.
She's tying it back into San Francisco public officials who are supporting this. And again, Pelosi, Feinstein, the late Rose Pak, who was a Beijing operative, and she controlled politics in the Bay Area while she was alive. She died 3 years ago. And this brings in Gavin Newsom, Willie Brown, Kamala Harris. They're all implicated in the Chinese illicitly moving personnel, and I maintain military, into California.
Yep, and remember, Trump's Brigadier General Shipley did sign that Marine order, U.S. Marines order, activating reserve units, and that's, I've been told that's a 120-day window on that order. It's a personnel organizational order. You're familiar with what I'm talking about.
Very familiar, yes.
And so that means that somebody high up, and remember, Shipley was, in fact, nominated for moving up in the ranks by Trump, and that was announced by the Department of Defense in, I think, January or February of this year. So what Shipley is a Trump guy in the military rather than, the Obama people who are still the left behind traitors. But Shipley has done this, meaning that somebody expects action within 120 days. So
I think it's going to be
really
sooner.
fits a timeline.
I think it's likely to be sooner. All this going on and the rollout of the UN forces being spotted in 18 states, and then the timing within 24 hours Trump activates the reserves, that's a countermeasure. And
yes,
when you look at all the events happening in California right now, Mike, these things aren't happening in isolation. And I just want to bring one thing back to your attention. I wrote back on April the 10th that in an April 9th Washington Post article, the UN was stated as having trained the new Mexican National Guard at the time in humanitarian training. And that's when I really started watching the Oroville Dam again. At one point, it was 4 feet from overtopping. The gates are a mess. The spillway is destroyed. And there are 2 big rainstorms away from that dam breaking and all hell breaking loose. And who could they bring in? The blue-helmeted Mexican National Guard. And that would be a way to disguise the insurrection coming out of California with UN forces.
Oh, yeah. Yep. And that doesn't even consider if Newsom gives communist China permission to land troops at the LA port and literally occupy California on a, quote, humanitarian mission, maybe under the cover of the UN, but it's really about a communist invasion. And they'll start with California. And, of course, they won't.
No.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm just acknowledging you're right on the money. Your information there is exactly what I'm hearing, too.
And, you followed Steve Quayle's work, too. There are some very crazy geological things happening in California right now. A big cover-up from the U.S. Geological Survey, USGS. And I think that's the right name for it, right? U.S. Geological Survey?
Yeah, but the cover-up's not complete. You remember at the presentation in Branson, Steve interviewed these geologists who were university professors from Oregon State. I couldn't believe they went on the record.
Well, it's probably because they don't yet realize the implications of what happens when the public finds out about all this.
Yeah, they didn't get the memo. Yeah, exactly.
Right, they didn't get the memo. Yeah, you said it better. So there's this convergence of events, and the PG&E shutting off the power is huge. And again, understood in this context, just like you said, Dave, in this context, it is a much bigger picture. And of course, that California, the fate of California, very likely controls the fate of the next election. So if it's, the Democrats can steal enough votes and falsify enough votes to get pretty close. And if they control California, they have a chance. If they don't control California from an electoral standpoint, they don't have a chance at all. Period.
Yeah, exactly. When I was on Michael Savage's show, and he was amazingly open to me saying some things. And because he's one of the few guys you're going to find that has mainstream media crossover to regular stations that's not compromised. Yeah. And Mike asked me, he said, so you think the Hillary Clinton getting back into the race is going to trigger the revolution, the Civil War? And I said, no. I said, she's going to get back in the race, but when the realization comes that they can't win, and they can't win legitimately, I don't care how many voting machines they have, that's when the poop's going to hit the fan. I mean, what do you think? What do you think is going to trigger this Civil War uprising?
Well, my current assessment is that Hillary Clinton doesn't plan to run. She plans to be installed. And, there's a plan underway to put her in to bypass all of this and, bypass elections and get rid of Trump before the end of this year, march him out in handcuffs. Remember when Rashida Tlaib, Congresswoman, talks about, they're trying to find prisons in Washington to put Trump's cabinet members in, and where to put Mike Pence in prison and Trump himself. This is something that she heard in a meeting with Democrats. She slipped up and let it out. And it's on the record now. That's exactly what she's talking about.
See, they have a
treason.
Plan. That's treason.
It is treason. It's absolutely treason. And Trump should issue military police arrests right now of all these treasonous actors. But I think he wants them to. Think about it strategically. He wants them to try to initiate it first, and then he'll have the Marines ready to respond. But that way, you can prove that they tried a kinetic coup, a hard coup.
Now, I know that was pretty lengthy, Chuck, but a lot of that sounds plausible. What say you?
Yeah, I could believe they're capable of that, because what happens when, and it's going to be too hot. We're going to make it too hot to handle, when, Pelosi, it makes me think, wow, that's really what their plan is, because all these little pieces, like the guy was saying, boy, that really makes the puzzle kind of makes all these pieces kind of line up. That would make sense that they would do something like that.
Well, exactly. So, she said she's going to make August too hot to handle, and look at all the mass shootings or October. I'm sorry, no, August. Yeah, it was August.
Mm-hmm.
Going to make August, and then look at all the mass shootings we had, all the gun control, blah, blah, blah. So we know they have no problem shedding blood. Now, this is very interesting. Listen, all we're doing, friends, this is just all fell in our lap this week, and we're just trying to put the pieces together. But, Chuck, check this out, what they were talking about Pelosi being, just listen.
I think in this case we have very clear facts. There is, and Liz and I talked about this before the show, you could impeach Pence first. The problem is that Donald Trump then has to name his replacement. But I think that maybe a deal could be struck where he was told, if you don't make a replacement, then Nancy Pelosi does become president. And so you are going to be impeached and convicted. You need to make this replacement so that the proper party remains in power.
So what they're gearing for is the impeachment of Pence, Trump, whatever, put Nancy Pelosi in. We know the story. Nancy Pelosi will then nominate Hillary for vice president, and then Pelosi resigns, and Hillary's president, and everybody's hunky-dory. But this is what they're openly talking about on the media, man.
Wow.
This is a real serious deal. And I like what Mike Adams said. The old saying, the police, they can't do anything. They can't do anything unless a crime's been committed, right? So, is that what Trump's waiting for? Is Trump waiting for them to make their move, and he's already got the military in place to counter that move and say, hey, look, this is what they tried to do. Now we can we can go in.
It would make sense. If you think about it, that would seem like to be the wisest way to do it.
Right. I mean, it really would. Now, let me. I know we've been playing a lot of clips, Chuck. Just bear with me because I've got.
Yeah, that's fine.
We're probably going to go over a little bit too, so just hang with us. But this is very interesting too. We've got California fires that have started up last night. There has been actual explosions caught on the weather map, on these weather maps, 5 big explosions. We heard Hodges and Adams talking about that, but just listen to this real quick.
Number 1, possible Q proof. Connections made. With the power outages and reports of strange activity coming out of California, I thought it made sense to look at it through the looking glass. Let's check it out. Andy embeds 1762 from Q, California intentionally lighting fires to recoup lost federal funds. Q asked, what happens when California is in serious debt and lost priority aid from the federal government due to sanctuary status? An obvious statement man says, watch California, stuck in my mind. We've got a major power outage scheduled, fires that immediately began, and strange reports of curfews. Next, he says, so a power outage is scheduled and then fires immediately break out in multiple regions? Same day? Now, folks, here's where it gets extremely alarming. This video shared by High Impact Vlogs on his channel is from Logic Before Authority, who discovered using weather radar these anomalous events, which appear to be explosions at the very same moment fires began breaking out once again in California.
It's been said and known in the last little bit that there was a fire that outbroke in Sandalwood, California. It's east of L.A., okay, up in the foothills, east of L.A., down the valley there, basically. You can see it in the center of the screen. It's 2 explosions that look to be about, I don't know, probably 30, 40 miles apart. There are 2 different fires that exploded at the exact same moment there. You can see them in the center of the screen. The only thing is there are 3 more. If you look over to the right-hand side of your screen, out in front of the bubble, right in front of the bubble, the little orange bubble on the right side of the screen. You see that one? At the exact same moment, these 2 other explosions take place, one on the right-hand side, and I don't know that exact location yet. All simultaneous. At least 5 explosions all at the same time. I don't know what's going on in California, whether they're going to claim this as forest fires or what they're doing, but California is under attack.
These are the same type of anomalies that we saw last year in the Paradise Fire event. The same anomalous explosions sparking fires.
Right there. That thing, that projectile looking thing, that's something more than smoke.
Tandy reports the weather in California turned on a dime at this very same moment.
They turned on the wind at around 8:30. I looked out this window at 6 o'clock this morning. It was completely calm. Yet, we had the mist laying on the hills. Totally socked in. I will show you the other side also. The sky on the east side looks worse than it did last November when the hill fire hit through here. Okay. Winds are getting quite high, but the color of that sky, I don't know if you can see it as well as I can, is hazy white, especially over there. 2 miles from my home.
Now, returning to obvious statement man's thread, there is a curfew, but that could be explained by the massive power outages as a crime circumvention method. Okay, fine. But here's the weird part. Only a few hours ago, CNN, who is barely covering this at all, put up an article detailing only the power outage while ignoring the fires. Look at their trends. What? This is it? Before the California fires were perpetually covered and now nothing? All right, so moving on. You might be thinking, so what obvious statement, man? Well, listen, watch California. Remember that? He goes on. Remember this. Trump rids major U.S. container port of Chinese communist control. Of course, reported on by a real news source, Judicial Watch. An obvious statement man says that just happened right before the outages, right before the fires. Number 9, ports, fires, and California were all mentioned in Q Post 2037. Does this mean more fires? Friends, we can draw no hard conclusions from this thread, but what I wanted to bring to your attention is the contrived nature of the power outages caused by PG&E, implemented by PG&E for no good reason, in the fires that then immediately broke out, and these anomalies, these explosions, which appear to be the fires breaking out in real time via weather radar.
So I like to thank the SGT report, Chuck. So apparently there's been 5 explosions that have started massive wildfires out there outside of L.A. now. Have you heard anything about that?
I have not heard anything about that, but, that's an interesting thing to hear them say that because, I basically think of, what happens over there in Israel, when Islamic people, the terrorists set fires. That's like one of their tactics. So it would make sense that those who kind of believe in doing terroristic activity too in our own country, our officials would do the same thing because they see what they do over there too. So I'm sure they're, privy to share their techniques. So it wouldn't surprise me if that's actually what's going on.
Well, there's a gentleman by the name Chuck, the Fugly American. And he has a theory, and I just want to share this with you real quick. He said, I've been following this for a few days, and the pieces seem to fit from many different threads. Here's my pure speculation. Now, this is just speculation, but grounded in quite a few facts. The White Hats had PG&E turn off power to Northern California, and then they canvassed the entire area with helicopters with LIDAR technology that's basically like ground-penetrating radar, but it detects metal, hollows, concrete, especially electricity. So with all the legitimate electricity turned off, it was easy for them to scan below ground, coordinate by coordinate, to detect the exact location of the tunnel system connecting DUMS in California to Utah, and wherever else, because the tunnel still had power which runs on their own power grid. The underground power network was being masked by the above-ground electrical network. So after they had mapped out the exact locations, the next day there were 5 simultaneous explosions caught on satellite in the mountains and wasteland areas. So his theory is the tunnel systems were collapsed and they cut off the bases from one another in key strategic locations. And the power being out or cut to 2 million homes was obviously necessary to pinpoint the still active electrical pathways on the tunnel system. This is war, ladies and gentlemen, and the deep state just got served a hearty defeat. Look at the facts of what has occurred recently. The military has been training for the subterranean battle. Trump's pulled out of Syria, and the Turks are given the go-ahead to wipe out the last vestiges of the deep state in Syria amongst the Kurds. The Chi-Coms are booted out of the beach port, our second largest and most strategic shipping port. Deep state goons being arrested and outed everywhere, from federal judges to politicians and corporate sociopaths. So this is a war. Make no mistake, it's a war between the non-corrupt military and the NSA against the CIA and the deep state communists. So it is full-on war, but the mainstream media propaganda machine will not report it. So it is a secret war being fought with technology, law, propaganda, blackmail, and this fella says that he is loving it. Now, that's just a theory. I don't want to start spreading conspiracy theories. It's not what this show is, but something big is happening in California, and we are being deceived and diverted by this impeachment junk. And this is all the media is talking about, knowing good and well it's not a legitimate constitutional impeachment, but they're keeping the news full of it. They're not even reporting about these wildfires from those explosions out in California.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting when we talked about California's economy and, about the bankruptcy stuff kind of coming up and how, what they say, because their money's so depleted, and then that will get them the federal money coming in because of the fires. I was like, wow, the sanctuary status and how they're kind of pulling back, saying, we're going to go ahead and do the sanctuary thing. And he goes, well, we're just going to pull your, remember Trump threatened them and said, well, just, we'll stop funding this, and this. Like, oh, wait a second. So that's their thing, is we'll just go ahead and set fires, and then you'll have to send it to us.
Well, yeah.
So it would make sense. I mean, I could see the logic behind that. Like, I'm not saying that's what they're doing, and I know that, but if you think about it, well, that would make sense because they're lawless like that, and they don't care about people. They just want the money, and they want to stay in power.
Right. I don't know, but obviously something is happening big in California. And I didn't mean to make the whole program about this, but we need to be aware.
Right.
And so we can tie it all back to the beginning, Chuck, where I was talking about the God pan, the manipulative terror, accusations. This is what this God does. He intimidates, puts panic in. And so not only is it happening on an individual basis with family members and coworkers, it's happening on this nationwide, I believe anyway, with what's happening out in California. So I guess all eyes on California. But Christ told us the very rock that this demon come from is where Christ said, upon this rock I build my church, and the gates of hell cannot prevail.
Yeah.
So we have to understand that whatever plans the enemy has, we are above that. We have authority over that. We battle principalities, powers, and spiritual wickedness in high places. And this is what Christ is talking about. The church is built on top of this. We have authority over it, Chuck.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, the reason we've said it multiple times, the reason we talk about this stuff is not to freak everybody out. And like you said, spread conspiracy theories, even though most people will consider the truth a conspiracy theory, But it's like, we just want people to be aware of these little nuggets that we're finding. We're the watchmen, like you said, we're paying attention to what's going on, and we're listening to what these different people are saying, because the mainstream media is, of course, because they don't know God, and the devil has just got control of pretty much the whole thing, that, they're not going to tell you what's going on because that's not a part of their agenda. Their agenda is to steal, kill, destroy by, robbing you of the knowledge. The Bible says, without vision, my people perish. Without knowledge, my people perish. It's like that's what's happening. People are just basically, they're clueless of what's going on, and they're having to suffer for it. So that's what our desire is, to put information that we're getting out there so people can look into it. We do our best to look into as much of it as we can. But, like I was saying, there's so much information coming in. Like, it's hard to kind of process the whole thing. So we're just kind of putting, the stuff out there as it comes in and say, hey, check this out. Be aware of this, or, look into it.
Right. Well, Benjamin Faircloth, last Sunday at his church service sermon, he preached out of Jeremiah 27. Now, we know that judgment's coming. We know that the tribulations are coming. You know that we're going to be put into captivity. The devil's going to have a short time to reign. We know all of this is coming. So one side of this, we're looking at this as something major breaking loose in California, whatever it may be. But his message out of Jeremiah 27, I want to kind of paraphrase and give you some food for thought to think about. This is important. The Okay, it says in the beginning, at the reign of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah, came this word unto Jeremiah from the Lord, saying, Thus saith the Lord to me, Make thee bonds and yoke, and put them upon thy neck, and send them to the king of Edom, and the king of Moab, and the king of the Ammonites, and the king of Tyrus, and the king of Zidon, in the hand of the messenger which comes to Jerusalem unto Zedekiah the king of Judah, and commanded them to say unto their masters, Thus saith the Lord of hosts, God of Israel, Thus shall ye say unto the mastress, I have made the earth, the man and the beast upon the ground by thy great power and outstretched arm. And verse 6 says, And now I have given all the lands unto the hand of Nebuchadnezzar. So here, basically what this is saying is they were having this big rally in Jerusalem. Okay? And in their day, they were having a rally, basically, we're going to make Jerusalem great again. Okay? But the Lord laid it on Jeremiah to go prophesy to these people and say, I don't know why you're out here saying you're going to make Jerusalem great again, because God has told me to tell you that he is about to hand this land over to Nebuchadnezzar, who at the time was the deep state. You know, Nebuchadnezzar was the king of Babylon. He was going to turn the Babylonians loose on Jerusalem and destroy Jerusalem because they hadn't repented. Yeah. And his message basically was, if we put it into context of what Jeremiah did, it would be like today, if Jeremiah was alive today and God was going to tell us, you know, I've given y'all time to repent and you haven't repented, so now I'm going to hand this land over to the Democrats. Mm-hmm. In parlance, a parallel would be, take any of the rallies this week, whether it be Minnesota or down in St. Charles, and Trump was having his big rally. Jeremiah actually went up to the podium and said, I know y'all are excited about making America great again, but God's prophesied, or for me to prophesy to you, that he's going to turn this land over to the Democrats, and there's nothing you can do about it. Yeah. And, you know, Benjamin Faircloth preached that message to warn us that this could be what we're about to face, you know, since we're still slaughtering babies and we're not dealing with the corrupt as quickly as we should with justice. You know, this is, you know, could this be what we're seeing in California, a warning from God that he's about to turn our land over to the Democrats? Yeah. I mean, something to think about.
Kind of sobering. You know, because you think about it, like I was having a conversation with a guy here. I was getting gas here in my town, and he saw my shirt and said, "Hey, cool shirt." And we got in a conversation. He's a believer, and we were talking about how, you know, everybody's fine and dandy when the economy's going well, and, you know, on the externals everything's good, and they don't pay any attention to the spiritual. You know, and it's really sad because it's like, you know, everybody, we're all glad, of course, you know, if we have godly leaders, if we have people doing the right thing, and we should be, it's a good thing. But more than that should be who's ruling our heart, who really has the reins of our country and heart. Is it God? Or are we just like, kind of like Judas, you know, we want Jesus to come and, you know, rip the deep state apart, but we really don't care that he's the Lord of our life.
Right.
You know, I mean, it's like you're missing the big picture. The big picture is God wants justice in your heart. He doesn't just want justice in your country. That's important. But he wants people to repent and to know who he is. So that's really what we should be concerned about, even more than the deep state or the Democrats taking over or any of that stuff. You know, it's good to talk about that stuff. But that really, you're here for, 50, 60, 70, 80 years, and then you die, and who's going to even care about Democrat, Republican anymore? You know, I mean, it's just really, now you have the concern of where do I stand before God? That's really what you should be thinking about
Well, exactly. And so that's why I want to kind of get back to the beginning. We are to speak the word with boldness. We are to stand for truth regardless of whatever we're facing. We have got to stand firm and speak with boldness, because God has a bigger plan for us. This is why we have been put through the ringer. This is why we have been enduring all of these hardships, whether it be from your relationship or people you work with. It is strengthening you. It is building you. It is endurance. It is, you go to the gym to lift weights, and when you're done lifting weights, your muscles hurt, but you're building strength, and this is what God is doing to us right now, friends.
Yeah.
The hardships we find ourselves in, He is building our strength, because I believe, regardless of which way this goes, of what we're seeing happening in California, whether this is Trump going to clamp down on the corruption in California, or whether this is God giving our land over to the Democrats, we are going to have hard days ahead.
Mm-hmm.
And this strengthening that we have been building, that God has put us through these hardships, He is strengthening us for bigger jobs and bigger days ahead.
Yep, I agree with that.
So, well, Chuck, I'm sorry, man. I mean, we had a lot to get through. I know our clips were lengthy.
Oh, that's all right. No, that's good, because, it kind of helps me stay on task, because with my ADD, it kind of, it's easy to bounce around a lot. So this kind of made it kind of easy for me to do that.
Right. I know the feeling. But hopefully we have given hopefully we have given you some information, some food for thought to be researching, looking into, because we know the media is not going to be talking about this. And so, Chuck, why don't you lead us out of the program tonight with a closing prayer?
All right. I'll be honored. Dear Lord, I just thank you so much for today. Thank you for just blessing us with cooler weather. And it's a blessing when we're out driving around in this weather, and especially me without air conditioning. It feels good to roll down the window. It's nice and cool. Just little things. We just appreciate everything, Lord, whether it's a weather thing or we're thankful, of course, that you give us good news sources, Lord, that you give us good alternatives to the lying mainstream media. Lord, I'm just very grateful, Lord, to have truth, Lord. I just can't imagine what our lives would be like if we didn't have truth. God, I just pray you'd help us to recognize that it's about walking with you every day, knowing you better. Lord, when we know you better, Lord, we want to do the right thing. We don't have to make ourselves do the right thing. Lord, I just pray that you would help us to love your truth, God, to love pure truth, God, that whenever something isn't true, we would turn away from it. And that you would help us, Lord, whenever you show us something, that we would share it with those around us, Lord, that we can all keep each other focused on truth, God, that we would all we're looking forward to the truth in the flesh coming back one day, Lord. We're looking forward to you coming back. Lord, I just pray that you would give us a good night, help us to think about the things that you've shown us tonight, and help us to be faithful to do what you've called us to do, Lord, every day. In the name of Yeshua. Amen.
Amen. Well, like we had said at the beginning of the show, when it's falling apart in the physical, it's coming together in the spiritual. And so, regardless of what we're seeing happening in California and what we're about to endure, it's falling apart in the physical, friends.
Mm-hmm.
But it's coming together in the spiritual. Go ahead.
That's right. I was saying, Jesus said, when you see all these things coming upon the earth, all the desolation and the stuff from the sky falling down, what does he say? Does he freak out and run into the cave? He goes, no, look up, for your redemption draws near. So, like, when you see the whole world in chaos, when it's going to get that way, one way or another, whether it's like next 1 month, next year, it's going to progressively get more and more like that because the Lord's getting closer. But we don't fearmonger. We don't do any other stuff. We just look at it. We're okay with seeing things the way they are, but we're knowing that our redemption is drawing near because heaven is really our home. We're only passing through like the like that, song says, we're only pilgrims passing through, and the word says that too. So,
amen. Amen. Well, the choice is ours, friends. It's time to repent, give your life back to Jesus, walk right, still speak the truth, and do not let these interferences bring us down. Don't let it rob us of what our duty here is. I know you're going through spiritual battles, man. Mm-hmm. You're going through spiritual battles, but this is a reason you're being strengthened. Hold the course. And if you want to combat it, just like Paul did, if you're in a home situation and everything is just going awry, then go down to the local store and start telling people about Jesus. Get out there and do some work. That's what we're commanded to do. So, Chuck, whew, listen, man, this was all dumped into my lap. Just so I'm learning just like you are, brother.
It's cool because I love to hear about all this stuff. I mean, I could read this stuff like 24 hours a day. It drives my wife crazy because she looks at it and goes, kind of overwhelmed her. But then I just love to know what's going on, and I love to see how God's going to turn stuff around. That's why I enjoy, hearing about this stuff and knowing what's going on. It doesn't freak me out because the Lord helps me have the right perspective. So.
Oh yeah, most definitely. So, well, good to have you. We'll hopefully we can have a regular type of show next week. But I felt we had to get this information out. Regardless.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yep.
So people can know it. But well, it was good to have you, brother. Is everything going good in the film industry?
Yeah, it's going so far. I mean, it's just I'm just waiting on the Lord's timing. I'm just trying to do what I can while I'm waiting. So, how it is, the Lord wants you to be faithful right where you are, and then He'll open those doors the rest of the time. So,
Amen. Well, it's been a good one. We put another one in our back pocket. And so,
yeah, it's exciting, man. I always like being on the show. I hate it when I can't be on, but I always, try to tune in and listen. And I'm always blowing your phone up with text messages, commenting like I'm there, even though I'm not. So I'm there in spirit, even if I can't be there in person. So,
well, that's all right, brother. Just remember that the things coming upon this earth, men's hearts are going to fail them. So I am Old Smokehouse.
And I'm Chuck Bird.
And we'll catch you later. Bye-bye.
Smokehouse. To talk to Smokehouse, dial 712-770-3857. That number once again is 712-770-3857. Then dial 252-380, followed by the pound sign. Call in to join the show.
SmokehouseStudios.net. God is among us. The door to the ark is slamming shut.